materials are available that people who are interested can explore at their own pace and from their own perspective.
These technologies address a wide range of challenges and incorporate vast amounts of information. People interested in what we are doing come to us with many different perspectives, views, and areas of focus. They might be an angel investor curious about supporting our WeFunder campaign, a potential CEO candidate, an industry heavyweight looking at the possibility of a strategic partnership, or they may be somebody already engaged in cybersecurity looking at us as either a threat or a future acquisition. We can never know. For those reasons, we've tried to make it possible for individual members of our audience to follow their own paths in exploring who we are, what we do, or the industry in general. To that end, we've begun coalescing the information that we once were scattering to the four winds in order to have our voices heard. We're bringing these things back from LinkedIn, Facebook, and various blogs and forums, specifically into our articles and videos web pages, which you can find by traversing the menus of our CertitudeDigital.com website. We strongly suggest that you start with the Deeper on Cybersecurity book. Obviously, we're grateful when you buy a copy, but we do provide free versions on our website, and you can obtain Kindle Reader copies for free from Amazon. We do this because the book helps us establish common points of understanding, a lexicon, and search terms for future research with our audience. The book is factually dense in places, but you need not read the entire book cover to cover to derive value from it. The table of contents and the index are well organized, and you can read only those sections that apply to your specific interests. From there, I suggest visiting our videos webpage on our site, where you will find a wide array of short videos that address a number of topics, both specific and general. You will probably want to follow that up with a visit to our articles webpage, where we have collected together our writings over the years, as well as some from other sources. More specific information can be gleaned using our search functionality on the main menu bar of our website. This is where knowing in advance the appropriate terminology, relationships, and history is especially helpful. I also recommend the U.S. Patent Office's PAIR, P-A-I-R, search website, where you can look up patents and patent applications by the inventor or by the specific application or patent number. I would investigate all of these options before trying Google searches on the internet. This is in part because you'll need to know what you are looking for and how to find it, but also because you'll need a healthy dose of skepticism to protect yourself. As I have stated, and hopefully proven, many times before, the current state of cybersecurity, and to a lesser extent identity authentication, is for all intents and purposes little more than a gangland-style protection racket that has been in play for nearly 50 years. The amount of disinformation and outright lies that are published out there exceed even the garbage that Trump and the Russians are spreading to get that corrupt imbecile reelected.
The book makes reference to several articles on LinkedIn that appear relevant, but the links seem to be broken. What's up with that?
When we started out more than a dozen years ago, I used my personal LinkedIn account as a means to publish our articles and other information to the many people who have been very supportive of me and my work. I got to the point where I had over 29,000 LinkedIn connections or followers. LinkedIn has always been abusive of their customers' private data in many of the same ways that Facebook and Google are. But because LinkedIn does not have the same audience size or app development relationships at the same scale, the abuses by developers and advertisers of paid access to private data that didn't belong to them wasn't at nearly the same level as those larger offenders. However, when Microsoft purchased LinkedIn, we started seeing on the dark web and with our data duplication detection algorithms against the public internet, indications that LinkedIn was directly selling data on the open market to third parties, particularly those with an existing Microsoft relationship. Our own connections on LinkedIn were diverse, spread evenly among a number of political, social, religious, and cultural groups. We had always known that LinkedIn management and ownership had a strong right-wing and evangelical bias. Proselytizing by Christian fundamentalist groups was openly permitted, even though LinkedIn was presumably a secular business website. However, we began receiving large numbers of complaints from our connections about harassment to those who were Muslim, Hindu, Jewish, and especially members of the Atheist Republic LinkedIn group. Roving bands of Trumpies and their ilk were ganging up on posts of anyone who had a more liberal bent or business. We began doxing these abusive members. This threatening behavior from the alt-right community became increasingly extreme and aggressive without any interference from LinkedIn. And then LinkedIn itself began arbitrarily and capriciously suspending or shutting down without notice or justification the posts and accounts of their more liberal members in the run-up to the 2018 midterm elections. We called LinkedIn out several times about this behavior, privately at first and then publicly, and LinkedIn ultimately shut down my own personal account in March of 2020. A month later, they shut down our Certitude digital account as well, even though that account had not been used to voice these concerns. We believe that account was shut down to harass distribution of advanced copies of the book Diva on Cybersecurity, which contains a number of fact-based accounts of cybersecurity improprieties by Microsoft and Bill Gates personally, as well as IBM. Just so you know, Bill Gates and I have a somewhat acrimonious history that dates back to 2004. In 2003, I, as the owner of Failsafe Designs, then in Houston, had filed a U.S. patent application and federal trademark application on caller ID for email, my email spoofing prevention solutions based on the SPF proposal of 2000. I filed a second patent application on the same technology in January 2004. Both applications have been filed as published, and I had been publishing regular incremental updates on the progress of my work on the Internet, since it was based on a public standard and intended for the public interest. In February 2004, Bill Gates announced Microsoft's theft of my work, lock, stock, and barrel, daring me to take them on about it with my limited resources. Unfortunately, this was consistent with the way they had stolen technology from other startups at the time. I expended monies I didn't have, mounting a legal fight that in and of itself was not effective, but which did result in me traveling to China in October of 2004 to block the sale of the technology to the People's Republic of China, where I was successful and coincidentally met the mother of my youngest daughter. Microsoft then had to pull their purloined copy of my technology back into their Hotmail email product, where it died a slow and miserable death. Fortunately, thugs aren't particularly creative in their behaviors, and we had predicted the possibility of retaliation. So we preserved our articles and connections information prior to those accounts being suspended. The articles and videos have since been reposted to our articles and videos web pages on our CertitudeDigital.com website, and we will correct the links in the Diva on Cybersecurity book with the next printing. We are correcting bad links elsewhere as we run across them or are told about specific instances.
You state in the book and elsewhere that you'd like to see large parts of this technology become open source. Can you explain a little about that?
I do think that open source, where the major portion of the technologies are maintained by the public, accessible to the public at no charge, and held to a standard of public service, is very appropriate to large sections of cybersecurity. For one thing, we feel like basic online security and identity safety are fundamental human rights, which the open source community can enforce and support well. However, some aspects of cybersecurity are simply not suited to open source. One of the issues there is that if you openly publish all of your secrets as source code to the open source developer can use them, the hacker and malfeasant can also see them and get an advantage trying to work around them. We also have the issue of nation states like China, Russia, India, Israel, and North Korea not only acting in a capacity in a huge way, but also being highly disrespectful of Western intellectual property and privacy rights. We do not want to freely give them the tools to harm us, either as a nation or as individuals. Finally, there are many value-add things we bring to the fore that are far more than basic cybersecurity and privacy products and services. And our third-party partners should have every right to build versions of those into the vertical markets they represent for a fair profit. So we actually see the implementation of our technologies as having three robust, nearly equal components. We see a very healthy open source component with strictly enforced coding and architectural monitoring by a committed oversight community, of which Certitude Digital would be a charter member. As a standalone part of that community, we also see a second strong presence as a regulatory standards and compliance unit, independent of political orientation. We see ICANN, the Internet Domain Regulatory Organization, as the appropriate model for that. Certitude Digital would be a member of that organization as well. We see the third component as being made up of strategic partners who build out commercial products for profit under license from Certitude Digital, with standards adherence being regularly certified by this second organization. A very small portion of the technology related to the intellectual property would remain with Certitude Digital in perpetuity and distributed to open source and third-party developers as precompiled binaries under license. The second standards organization would ensure that pricing, access to, and continuity of those licenses was fair and equitable to all parties, free of course to the open source community, but with heavy restrictions upon their use. Building a carefully conceived, enforceable yet manageable legal framework and infrastructure to support all of this internationally will be a challenge, and critical to the venture's success. We are diligently searching for a world-class CEO on the level of an Elon Musk to carry the business side of the house. And we are hoping to find an individual who, in addition to the other qualities and the character we seek, will have some experience with hybrid open source business models or access to others who do.